Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we begin a 5-part series entitled Marriage Is, we will focus on first, marriage is two becoming one. Secondly, we will talk about marriage is learning forever. It's a forever learning experience. Third, we will talk about marriage is surrendering selfishness. Fourth, we will discuss marriage is the place of intimacy. And then finally, we will discuss marriage is the grooming ground for children. As we begin discussing the series Marriage is Two Becoming One, keep in mind that marriage is first the covet relationship of a male and a female into the bond of marriage. What does it mean for two to become one? What does it require for two to become one? If the covenant is between a male and a female, then what are the requirements? First, in order for the two to become, there are at least 3 prerequisites that must be in place. So when we talk about two becoming, if that is to take place, if the two are to become one, then here are 3 prerequisites for that. Number 1, each individual must be the one. Each individual must be the one. What does that mean? They must be one in spirit, a spiritual relationship with God. They must be the one that is in a mental stable relationship with themselves. And each individual must be the one who is in a healthy place relationally with other people outside of the two becoming one. So when we look at the 3 prerequisites of the individual that must be in place, each individual must be number 1 in their own minds, number 1 in their own behaviors, number 1 in their own relationships. They must be one in a spiritual relationship with God. They must be one mentally as a stable individual, and they must be one as a healthy person already engaging in healthy relationships. Two becoming one. In order for two to successfully become one, each individual must approach marriage with the expectations of the following. Number 1, each individual must expect trust in the marriage. Every person must be willing to say to the other person in the relationship, I can be trusted. I can be trusted with your emotions. I can be trusted with your spiritual growth. I can be trusted with your fears. I can be trusted with some of your reservations about life, but I can be trusted. Secondly, in order for two to successfully become one, each individual must be an honest person going into the relationship. Honesty becomes a struggle if the place where a person learns honesty is in the marriage. Number 3, each individual going into the two becoming one must be people of compassion. If one person is almost a cold-hearted, nothing moves them individual, and the other person is a more compassionate, consoling individual, then it's going to be difficult for the two to assimilate into one. Number 4, each person must go into the relationship with the expectation of love if the marriage, the two becoming one, is going to be successful. Love means an unconditional regard toward each other. Love means not being overly critical toward one another. Love means I know I'm marrying an imperfect person, but with the imperfections in this person, I'm going to embrace them, I'm going to love them, and I'm going to appreciate them for who they are. Number 5, if the relationship is to be a successful relationship, each individual must come into the marriage ready to support the other one emotionally, financially, comfort one another. I understand that many times, especially in this economy, things do not always allow the male to be able to provide financially the way he ought to. But the male should be the individual within that home who always provide a supporting background for that family, an encouraging environment, an environment that says to the wife, if they're children, I'm going to be with you no matter what. Number 7, in order for the relationship of the two becoming one to be successful, there must be empowerment within the marriage. The husband must feel comfortable empowering the wife to excel. The wife must feel comfortable empowering the husband to excel. Number 7, if the marriage is to be successful, each individual must come into the relationship accountable. Not accountable to mom and dad, not accountable necessarily at work, although they need to be accountable at work. But now there is an accountability, one toward the other, the husband and the wife. And then number 8, if the relationship is going to be successful, the two becoming one, then there are expectations of intimacy in the marriage. The Apostle Paul put it this way. He said, it is reported that there is fornication among the Corinthian church. But then he will expand that by the time you get to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And he says, now in order to avoid fornication, let each man have his own wife, and let each wife keep on having her own husband. The expectation in marriage is not just for trust and honesty and compassion and support and needs being met physically, but also that the intimacy in that marriage excels. That is an expectation in marriage if the two are to become one. In the book of Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 24, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. How does the one flesh take place? The man must make up his mind that I am leaving my home of origin. I'm leaving my mother behind, I'm leaving my father behind, and I'm going to glue myself to my mate. The wife must make that same decision. I am leaving my mother behind, I'm leaving my father behind, and I am going to glue myself to that mate. But before the gluing take place, there must be a high level of spiritual maturity, there must be a high level of mental maturity, and there must be a high level of relational maturity for the two to really function as one. I'll see you back in class again next time. Don't be late and don't skip class.